Whenever managers are trying to guide their teams to change, they build the business case. So that's a logical argument on why the change makes sense, and they put in all the relevant facts and figures. And this builds logical commitment, which is definitely needed, but is not all. Research by Mian Chung Judge and Linda Hobecker on employee engagement shows that logical commitment is mostly used. However, emotional commitment is 4 times as strong in driving employee effort than the rational, logical commitment. So, if you want change to last, you'd better get people emotionally invested. And this is why co-creative methodologies are so powerful, because you involve people in the change process and you create the change together. So, you create this emotional commitment, and this leads to them having different beliefs, perceiving the world in a different way, and really changing their mindsets. So, how do you create emotional commitment when you're interacting with people or communicating with them or giving a presentation, for example? Well, it turns out there are 2 additional ingredients that are needed, and those were already discovered by Aristotle about 2,500 years ago. As he explains in Rhetoric, also called The Art of Rhetoric and on Rhetoric, there are 3 ingredients to persuading people. You've got logos, ethos, and pathos. And we've already seen logos because that's the facts and figures, that's where the business case comes in. And the 2 additional ingredients to create this emotional commitments are ethos and pathos. Pathos is all about creating this emotional connection to people. So it's really great for you to share how you're feeling about things, to use storytelling and anecdotes in there, perhaps even some humor. And you can go about creating this emotional impact in 2 ways. So either it's through emotions because you tell, for example, a story and that elicits deep emotions, or it is more in an aspirational way that emotionally what you're trying to do is very aligned with the values and aspirations of the people that are listening. So this is the way to get the emotional commitment going. But there's another thing, which is the ethos, and that is the credibility of the speaker, the credibility of the person that's talking. Are they trustworthy? Can we really trust them? Do they do as they say and say as they do? And this is also something that Aristotle looked at. And in the current situation, you can look at it like, well, how did these people behave before? Have they got a hidden agenda? And yes, people will notice that if you got a hidden agenda. Or whether you stick to what you told and what your track record looks like and the intention you have. That is super, super important, whether you care about the greater good or only defend your own interests. If we look at a traditional business presentation, we see that there's logos in abundance. There are facts and figures, and the logical argument is definitely there. What's usually missing is pathos. And as mentioned before, you can do some storytelling or telling some anecdotes of your own in order to really create that emotional commitment. But what works well, and perhaps even better, is getting the experiences and draw out the stories of the people that are listening in a certain field, because those are much more trustworthy and resonate even on a deeper level than you giving your own example as a project sponsor. Now, ethos is a tricky one. It's a trustworthiness. And what I often see is that people try to include their entire CV. Now, I attended a webinar a couple of weeks ago where one person took 10 minutes, yes, an excruciating 10 minutes to introduce themselves and give all the relevant CV facts and figures. And it was super, super boring, and people switched off because we were not there to hear all about this person's experience. We were there to learn. And only after the 10 minutes were over, the person actually started paying attention to the group and their learning experience. Same goes for marketing speech and entrepreneurs that throw in too much marketing speech. Our brains pick up on that, and they certainly don't like being sold to. So that's a no-go area as well. So what can you do instead? Well, some presentations you may have to introduce yourself, or you may have to give a job title, but then try to include any relevant facts, yes, only the relevant facts, as you go along, or when people ask specific questions. That's a perfect time to also throw in some experience that is relevant. The experiments. Next time you're invited to hold a presentation or give an update in the daily stand-up, do the Ethos-pathos-logos test. Are all of them included? And do they have the right amount of stage time? Enjoy adding some pathos to your communication and seeing how that affects the emotional motivation to change.